All right, everybody. Let's get the next show on the road. So, just as a quick heads up, this may only apply to a couple of people here, but GameMaker only runs on Windows, and also I know the latest version of Windows 10 can cause some issues with prior installations. Hopefully there aren't too many people that fall under this umbrella, and I'll be covering a few things beyond just the engine, some other game programming practice as well, so there's still stuff you'll be able to get out of this one. So anyway, let's get started with GameMaker Studio. I'm teaching this. That's my Twitter handle. I'm self-inserting here because I'm pretty cool, and look at that great photo of me lying on the floor, looking like a complete idiot. Anyway, so, about me, I'm the treasurer of this club. I've been using this program for over 10 years now. That is a very long time. And I've done quite a bit of game jams. Among that, I've been 4-time first place in game jams in the club. I got first place in the last GameMaker Community Jam, and I'm the 2-year running hardest gameplay winner at Games Plus Plus. And that's a local event held here around spring break. It's awesome. We'll talk about that more when we get there. Additionally, I've also actually worked in game design. If you were here 2 summers ago, I was a teaching assistant with one of the summer camp programs. I don't think I've had any former students in this room. No? I don't see anyone. But yes, so I did that, and also this last summer I was with the National Student Leadership Conference with their new game design program. That's where I taught Unity. So yeah, the internet, I'm quite popular there. You might be asking yourself, why is there a random screenshot of Undertale in the middle of this presentation? Why is it now overlaid with a screenshot of Hotline Miami, Risk of Rain, Hyper Light Drifter, Nidhogg, Spelunky? You know what these games all have in common? They were made with GameMaker. So yeah, fun little known fact, there's quite a few commercial titles made with the software. You might be asking, but man, I used this once in high school as part of a class, and it was like a kid's toy. What's going on here? Well, it's gotten pretty good for commercial development. It's moved towards that. So we'll go over why this is such a good choice, especially for 2D games. I wouldn't advise it for 3D, but for 2D, I have my reasons. So, why GameMaker? Well, first things first, it has a really fast workflow once you actually learn it. It has a little bit of a weird learning curve, it has a couple of quirks. Once you've mastered those, it's a really fast program to even prototype in and do full games with. Additionally, it's extremely lightweight. The entire basic engine, which is one room, exports to a file that's about 2 megabytes large. Consider Unreal, which has a base export size of around 300 megabytes, and Unity is somewhere in the 70s, last I checked. So yeah, GameMaker's engine is extremely light in comparison, and can do just as much in the 2D department, even more for some engines, I'd argue. Additionally, you don't need to have any programming experience. That's what drag and drop functions are for. I'll be focusing on the programming language side of this because you will get a lot more out of GameMaker if you do that. Also, you have access to some extremely powerful tools. Among them, you can export to multiple platforms. There's no royalties or fees. If you get really rich off the game in Unity or Unreal, you have to pay the developers. GameMaker, nope, you don't have to give them a single cent. You just buy the licenses and you're done. Also, it's extensible. You can write extensions to do many different things. So if you can't do it in base engine, you can write it in another language, and then hook it into this. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And while we're here, let's talk about how you get it. So this is the Yo-Yo Games landing page. And this is their website. They have all their showcases and things. You have all the documentation, the marketplace, which is like the asset store, and the community, which is good. I post on here sometimes. Maybe I'll help you with your programming questions on a rare occasion. If you want to download it, again, it's a Windows-only download, so just take care for that. Yeah.
What is it? Does GameMaker? Oh wait, never mind. I answered my own question. I was gonna ask if it automatically asks you to install updates through the client, and it just asked me. So.
Yeah, it will do that. Updates are very variable. When you install it, you'll be asked to choose between the beta channel and the stable channel. It doesn't make too much of a difference, but if you're worried about glitches on the beta channel, just go with the stable. I use stable just to stay in the loop of things. So yeah, you'll go here. You can download this. You'll see there's a studio free, professional, master collection. It's very expensive. Like, wow, look at those license costs. But thankfully, you can just do the free download and you make an account. Anyone here that has not set it up yet?
Speaking about those really expensive options, isn't there something cool going on right now?
You mean this? The Humble
Yes.
GameMaker bundle?
Whoa.
You can pay what you want for this. And in fact, if you pay more than $15, you get everything here on this page, which includes a professional license. That's it's $1.50, not $1.50, $150. Sorry, not that cheap. And then there's the HTML5 module, which is like $99. This is like $200. This is $99. These are pricey. These are games. And look at this, it comes with source code. So you can actually look at how these games were made. So actually, it's a good thing you brought that up, because let's talk about that for a second. If you get every single major module, the professional license, and all of these games, it's almost $2,000. It's a lot of money. And also, that includes project files and source code, so the value of that is actually probably way higher. Meanwhile, you can get this bundle and everything for $15. So let's do the math. You want to know how much you're saving? 99.2%. This is one spicy deal. This is me saying if you're really interested in learning this program after today, you should probably get this bundle because it's a pretty good deal.
How much time is left on the bundle?
That's a great question. Let's find out once I remember how Alt-Tab works. You have about 8 days, closer to 9. But yeah, you definitely want to pick this up. They did this bundle once before with even more impressive games in the code library, and it was just as great a value. So when you ever see a humble GameMaker bundle, it's worth the time. You can give the keys away to your friends or something, or tell them to buy it. Source code, though, that's what you really want, especially if you're interested in reverse engineering what they've got. So yeah, look at that cost savings. Isn't it great? So, you might be wondering, gee, what are you going to teach us today? What else is contained in this whimsical PowerPoint slide you put together about an hour before the lesson? Well, I'm going to walk you through the editor's layout and its features so you can explain the program, and then we're going to make a cool game together. So I'll provide you with some resources, like a script or two, a couple of sprites, so we'll have something to work with. Unlike Unity or Unreal, GameMaker doesn't come with many presets. There's tutorials that let you get started, but for the most part, you'll be doing a lot of the assets yourself. Actually, I was going to put together something pretty cool, like a 2D Super Mario Galaxy platformer, but I spent all night playing bootleg Russian Halo. Whoops. It was worth it. I won like 75% of games I played. So then I was like, I woke up this morning, I got here, and I'm like, I need to put together something. So I thought for a really brief period of time, and I decided a really great way to get into the basics, show you some stuff, work with some logic and game states, was this image. You might be asking yourself, gee, what does Halo 3 Golf have to do with this? And I'm thinking, let's make a little mini golf game. So we'll work through the basics of this together, and some sprites I've given you, and then from there I'll take your suggestions on what we can add and change about it. I'm going to go ahead and write this link on the board. This contains a couple of things I've already pre-built, so we can get started right away. Any questions so far? No, we're good? Excited? Tired of sitting inside a classroom for 5 hours on Sunday?
Okay, just so you know, Mark's not going to pick you up from there.
Hey, this is a decent marker. I'm surprised. I spoke too soon. I spoke too soon. There we go.
So it's a GMZ file, that's just standard project file?
That's an exported project file.
Okay.
Normally project files are GMX, and they're an entire file hierarchy. A GMZ is like a SID file equivalent.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, you can download that, and you can import it through GameMaker, or you can double click to open it. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and download this myself. And also, once we're done with this, I will put the final project we have up as well, so everyone else can download it and work with it. So if you're not following along 100%, like being able to keep up with typing and such, don't fret. I'll give you everything we have at the end. Okay. So now I just have to remember that URL. Yeah, and once you enter that, it should just automatically give you a link for my Dropbox. Save the file. Dip. Okay. I'll give everyone a minute to get here. When you're ready, just give me like a hell yeah. Anybody lost so far? Anyone have trouble installing? Don't know what they're doing? Oh no, how did I get here? I'm not good with computer. All right, think we're good? All right, cool. So this is what the editor looks like for GameMaker. You have your file hierarchy on the side. These are all your resources, we'll call them. This is where all of the editing will take place in this little window space. And then this is the console. Whenever whenever you compile a game, this will light up, give you a bunch of stuff. Some useful information, but a lot of it is just, debug messages. We can also go over print into this if you want to have better debug controls. So over here, you have all your different types of resources. I'll quickly give you a rundown of each. Sprites are the graphics of your game. You'll notice here I've included a wall, a hole, a flag, and a ball. Everything you need for basic mini golf. So you open this up, you have some options. GameMaker also includes a really cool, fully featured sprite editor. It's like a little pixel art program unto itself. It has a lot of interesting little features. We can go ahead and draw a happy face if we wanted. We can change its color. Yay, it's happy. We'll leave it like that for now because it's fun to do stuff like that. There's things here like collision checking, texture settings, origin. Don't concern yourself too much with this. We'll talk about that when we actually are implementing things. These control the center of the sprite for positions and whatnot. You also notice the other sprites are really simple. Here's a really basic checkered flag. One of the, oh god, what? Try that again. There we go. This is a wall sprite, and if you take a look at all of these sub-images, you'll notice they are different tilings. I also included the script that lets you auto-tile your wall, so it looks a little nicer. So yeah, those are sprites in a nutshell, and that's what we've been given. Sounds are pretty straightforward. These are little clips you can play. You can set them to play as an audio file. This is where you put your background music. Backgrounds consist of two major things. Backgrounds are what you can use to flood fill a room's background. It's either a solid color or you can set it to a texture. You can also create tile sets, which tiles are very low memory resources that you can individually specify in the level, and that lets you create really good looking rooms. For example, you can have a generic collision object that's just, an invisible square, and then you can put a tile behind it in the room, and then you can have some really nice looking tile levels. Paths are pretty interesting. If you're going to start doing more advanced stuff, these have a lot of cool applications. Namely, you can take a path, you can define a series of points, straight line, curved line, closed loop or not. You can also program these on the fly. You can generate them in code. You can use these to preset behaviors. If you're working with artificial intelligence, you could create a path point for a room layout in real time and have it walk along there. This is a really cool advanced feature. I think it's interesting to bring up. I haven't used it myself. However, in the future, you may find it pretty interesting. Scripts are predefined sections of GameMaker language code, which is its own built-in scripting language. You can sort of think of it as like a hybrid between C and Java style and the behavior of JavaScript. So this is what a sample code snippet looks like. GameMaker is a non-statically typed language. Just a heads up, you don't need to do anything fancy for your variables. For the most part, you can just declare them like this. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little. So this is a really basic argument that you give it the, you put this in an object like the wall, or if you go to the wall here, you'll notice we have all our sub-images. This is a means of calculating based on what's around the wall, what sub-image to use. So it makes it auto-tile and it looks a lot prettier. And it's quite a fun thing to have. So we'll go over how to use this and how you can write your own scripts. There's shaders, which are code you can write that directly accesses the graphics card memory. This is how you do some really crazy visual effects. If you were here when I presented Everything's Gone to Hell, you will have noticed that the screen was kind of wavy and distorted. That's what shaders can do. Shaders are extremely powerful, but they're going to be beyond the scope of today's lesson. Fonts. Those are for fonts if you want to draw text that doesn't look like, generic default Arial. That's a little blurry, anti-aliased and whatnot. We use a font. I'll load a font, probably. I don't think we have anything on this computer worthwhile except Corey or New, but I'll load a font in and show you how to play with settings so you can draw really good heads-up displays. Timelines let you sequentially order actions in a number of frames. Really good for cutscenes. We won't be going into these today. But again, interesting thing. Objects, however, are the biggest thing. These are the individual actors in your room. This is where you would put your player, your collision, your collectibles, anything that you want to interact with other things in the game, you make an object out of it. So I'll go ahead and I'll start by creating our wall. You'll notice I prefix all my resource names. This is just a way of keeping track of everything. And an object has events. So these are a list of triggers. So create, when the object is spawned, mouse input, keyboard input, when it collides with something, actions to perform every frame on a timer, when it's destroyed, a whole bunch of other miscellaneous options. So basically all your objects will be you have an event, and then you pick some actions. The GameMaker has a lot of really cool, really useful predefined actions. So if you're not sure, you don't understand programming or the environment, you can make it do really basic things with ease, like you can jump to a position. You just fill this out, click OK, and there you go. You have an action. For this, I'll be focusing on code, where you take this little snippet, execute code, and you can just write these in directly. There's so much more you can access through writing code out and using drag and drop, so I'll be focusing on that. I think everyone here has at least some understanding of programming syntax, so it'll be good to work with this. Is there anyone who is really uncomfortable with programming syntax in the room? Okay, excellent. Good to hear. And the last major thing is rooms. So rooms are where you place all your objects. You'll notice here this is your default room. You can pan around, zoom in, zoom out. You could set a grid to help place your objects. There's a whole bunch of other settings. First thing I'm going to do is up the room speed to 60. This makes your game run at 60 frames per second. You want to do this for your rooms. It's a great thing to do. You can place your objects in here, your tiles. If you want to work with the advanced physics simulation, that exists. However, this is also outside the scope of today, so we'll be covering that. Your backgrounds and your views, which we'll get into in a little bit. These are extremely useful for only showing a segment of the screen. So you can think like the old Mario games where you only see a section of the level at a time. That's what views let you do. Additionally, I'm just going to reduce the view size a little bit. The computer is running at a lower resolution than I'm used to, so I'm just going to lower the room size. We can work with these dimensions for now. This should be a 16 by 9 screen.
FBI, this is a raid on all. We found him today. Okay.
They found us. Right as I'm in the middle of explaining rooms too, I can't.
Excellent.
Having your suit doesn't fit.
Ew, gaming.
I know, it's big.
Anyway, with our guests here, so these are your rooms. You can do cool things and change the background color. So we're going to make a really cool mini golf game, so let's set it to green. Let's save this. And you may be wondering, gee, what does this look like so far? You can test what your game looks like at any time by hitting the green button. It will compile and run. Ignore the splash screen, and there you have it. This is what your room looks like. And actually, for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to lower the room size a little more. Oh, I just changed the view, not the actual size. There we go. So let's say we set our room to be this big. We save and run. Wait for the splash screen to go away. There you have it. If you have a higher license of GameMaker than the free version or the standard, you will not see the splash screen. I believe you can also disable it in the other menu, Global Game Settings. Make sure you take a look at this when you get the chance. This allows you to go in and set a whole bunch of things, like display splash screen. You can turn that off. You can turn off the cursor, change the icon. You can play around with the graphics. You can even set it up as an installer. So that's the basic overview. If you ever want to add a resource, you can right-click the folder and create it or load it, or you can click on any of the corresponding icons at the top. Has anyone lost so far? All make sense? Excellent. So let's go ahead and we'll start working on our game. So in this case, I'm going to be using a grid size of 24 by 24. That is the size I've defined my wall. I'm going to start by placing my wall to be like the basis of our mini golf game. So let's say we wanted to start with a level that was really basic like this. Now you may remember my wall has a whole bunch of little sub-sprites, so we can auto-tile, but we haven't configured any of that behavior. So we're going to get this. That looks silly. So how do we fix that? We're going to start by adding our first behavior to the objects. Alex?
How did you paint the wall?
In the
How
room
did you
editor.
paint the wall objects onto the scene?
Yes. In the room, when you are in the objects menu, there's a bunch of shortcut commands. So you hold down these keys and then you can click and drag. So in this case, if you click, you hold Alt, you can take it off the grid and put it wherever you want. Shift Control is is how I painted. You can also hold the right mouse button to delete them. You can also use Shift to select multiple objects at a time. And then there's plenty of other commands as well. They're all listed here, and for other windows where those things matter, they have their own listings as well.
Okay. Is there any way you added the object to, oh yeah, wait, never mind, you just made it before, right?
Yeah, if you want to set which object you're adding, you click on this little dialog here and click on the object you want.
Alright,
How did you change the grid size?
Snap X and Snap Y at the top.
thanks.
You can also turn off the grid by clicking on the grid button. It's a toggle. Any other room-related questions for now? Okay, so let's go ahead and get our walls working properly. So in our events, I added a create event. It's a giant yellow light bulb. And actions, control, execute a piece of code. This is what we'll be working with, is this sort of code block. We'll be putting one for each of our events. You can also split your code across multiple blocks if you wish. Also, if execute a piece of code is not a clear enough instruction for you, you can comment your code at the top with a triple slash. You can say set up wall appearance. And when you save the code block, it'll take on that name in the editor. Super useful if you want to split things up and keep track of your code that way. GameMaker includes a ton of built-in behaviors and default functions. The language is almost purely based on preset functions and values you can work with. So since one of our issues is the animation is going a little haywire, let's stop by halting the animation completely, which you can control with the constant image underscore speed. Let's set that to 0. If you want to know what constants are available or what functions you have, you can just hit the F1 button, and there's the entire manual. This is a fantastic resource. Not only is everything extremely well documented, up to date in here, but there's also usually examples. So one of the most difficult code snippets I see people struggle with is they want something to rotate, but they want it to rotate smoothly. So obviously one of the functions you may want is to get the difference between the two angles, what you're trying to rotate to. And at the bottom of most entries, there is an example that includes a code snippet that does exactly what you're looking for. There's also total, complete breakdowns of things in the room editor, the sprite editor. So if you're ever lost, always go to the manual first. There is so much that you can use from this. You can always just get it by F1, or by clicking the little help icon, or the help drop down. So now we've set our wall's image speed to 0. And then if we save this, we run the game now. Now we get just the squares. But of course, we're going to go one step further in making your game look nicer. We have all these little sub-images. And I wrote a script before that handles this for us. So you can load your own customly defined scripts, or any other function doesn't matter. And in this case, let's say we want to set the index of our image, which is the sub-image we have, to that, so we can say auto tile. And in this case, it takes one argument, and that is what we're tiling, which is the wall. Now if we save this, and we run the game, now we have a really nice, smooth-looking wall. So this is just one of the little pre-built features, and one of the things you can do with a little bit of scripting. Any traditional programming logic applies in GameMaker. You can apply to any of its objects, any of its constants. There are for loops, while loops, data structures, everything is in GameMaker. I'm pretty certain it's Turing complete, which means you can do everything with it. It may not be practical to truly do everything in GameMaker, but if you set your mind to it, it can be achieved. So now that we have that, let's start by implementing a little more logic in our game. So I think the next thing we want to add is we'll add our ball, which is our crudely drawn smiley face. And we'll start by adding some behaviors to this. Yes,
I'll
Alex?
ask some questions, but what was the specific object you sent to AutoTile?
That would be object wall, and this is the code for it.
Okay, so it's OBJ wall. Okay.
Yeah. I just tell you know, the way the auto title script works is it does a little math to indicate which image it goes with, and it needs to know if there is something at the top, left, right, and bottom side of it. And so it says, the script has a little function that checks if there is an object somewhere. So in this case, it checks up, down, left, and right, those coordinates. And then this is argument 0, and we feed it that argument.
Cool, thanks.
So for the ball, the first thing we want to think about is how we want to make this golf game work. So let's say, for example, you start with the ball was stationary, and you want to putt it in a certain direction. So you may want to think, okay, start by having it be still, and then let's say you use the left and right arrow keys and you rotate a little arrow, and you decide where you want to go. So we'll start by implementing that. So let's say we start with, under create, let's first tell the ball, you're not moving, and you're facing in the default direction. Direction is any value from 0 to 360, technically 359. That's the basic unit circle direction. So 0 will always be to the right, 90 is up, 180 is left, 270 is down. Your unit circle directions apply there. And let's say we want to keep track of, whether we want to be able to move the ball or not. So we can do, trying to think of a good descriptive variable name for this. Let's say can't hit. Let's say, yeah, you can hit the ball in a moment. So I think the next thing we want to have is we have our ball, it's stationary in the default direction, and we say, yeah, you can adjust your angle and get ready to hit it. So let's start by adding the behaviors for when you hit left and when you hold right, you can change the direction. So we can do if can't hit. So you can hit it. We can then say direction minus equals, we'll say 3. And then for right, we can do the same thing, but with a plus sign. So now we're telling our ball, you can be hit, and if you move these this way, it'll face the right way. And you may be thinking, we really need to see, are we facing the right way? And if you ever want to tell anything to the player, you want to show anything on the screen, the draw command is great. Draw will let you edit what's being shown on the game's canvas. In this case, GameMaker calls it the application surface. So we'll start by drawing, and there's a whole bunch of draw functions, so we'll go through this quickly. Let's say we want to draw an arrow in the direction we're facing. So we can start by saying, let's draw a white arrow. And we want to draw an arrow. You'll notice as we type it out, there is an autocomplete that gives us suggestions. So the only one that matches is arrow, and it takes 5 arguments. The coordinates that we're drawing to and from, and the size of the arrow. So that'll be how large the arrowhead is. So first thing we want to do is, okay, yeah, draw here. We don't know about these 2 coordinates yet, so we'll leave them blank. And we'll draw an arrowhead that's about 8 pixels big. So we'll start with that. And the next thing you may be asking is, how do we get which way we're facing? There are some functions for that. So let's say we'll do XX is generally the accepted command for doing math for a second coordinate pair. So in this case, our XX shall be our current X, and then we want to go a certain direction. You may be thinking to yourself, oh no, we have to draw a certain distance out at an angle, and you're thinking, great, trigonometry is back from high school on me. Don't worry, we can make this much simpler. There's a whole function dedicated to doing things like trigonometric operations for you. And you can see as you're typing out a function, the parameters and which one you're currently on is listed and bolded down here, so you never get lost, especially with nested functions. So the first parameter is length, so let's say we want to draw it out 16 pixels, and in the direction we're facing. Now we can do a similar thing with length direction y. So this will calculate the distance from our current coordinate out that amount at the angle we've given it. So let's fill in our arguments. And let's run the game. So if we did this, oh, that brings me to my next point. You should always add your objects in the room if you want to test things. So there's our ball, kind of tiny. Maybe we'll make it a little bigger. Let's run the game. Oh no, I made a mistake. So yeah, if you get an error, you will get that. It'll also appear in the console as well, so you can see it when you're done. In this case, I simply just said white for color, which is improper. There's color constants. That is what you want. So it's C_white. Now if we run it, there's our ball. Now we can move the arrows. You may be noticing, oh no, where'd it go? What happened? And that's because drawing, if you don't specify a draw behavior, an object will draw itself. However, if you decide you want to draw other things, it won't draw itself. And this is useful if you want to have like a little sprite for a control object that draws your heads-up display, but you don't want the object to display. GameMaker handles that for you. Thankfully, this is a really easy fix, as if you ever had a draw object and you still want your object to be visible, just draw yourself. Just like a traditional graphics rendering pipeline. And draw objects will always be rendered in the order in which they're typed, top to bottom. So I put the draw self at the end, so the line appears behind us, so we don't have a line that's sticking out on top of us. Now if we run the game, there's our ball, and there's our arrow. Does this make sense so far? Excellent. So now let's move on to the next step.
Can you go back to the code for the left and right real quick?
Sure. You may notice that when you put the left arrow, it may sort of rotate counterintuitively. You can swap the values if you like. It's working off the unit circle. That's why it might seem a little strange. For now, I am sticking to keyboard controls as they're pretty simple to implement. If we wanted to switch this to mouse controls, getting the mouse position is a couple of extra steps. We can look into that later. For now, though, let's see if we can get the basic logic up and running. Are you good with the code? Yeah. Okay. So the next thing we'll want is, now that you know which way you're aiming the ball, you want to push it. So let's say when you press the space key, you want to shut it. So in this case, we'll check. Yeah, I can hit it. Okay, excellent. So maybe the first thing you want to do is say, now that you've hit it, you can't hit it again. So you can't just keep repeatedly bashing it. After all, in golf, you're not allowed to just take your club and all the way to the end. That would be clear violation of rules. And then we can set its speed to something like, say 8 for now. 8 pixels a second. That's pretty fast. So if we run the game, we're going to run into a couple of issues with this. First being, let's say we want to go this way. Let's hit space. You're going to go right through the wall and right out of level, and you will keep running into infinity. That's not what you want. So let's fix all of that really quickly. One of the other pre-built variables is friction. This is how many pixels per speed your object will slow down when it's moving, if the speed is not continuously reapplied. So we'll kick the ball once, it'll start, and it'll slowly come to a stop. And now we want to have it so if it collides with the wall, it will bounce off the wall. So something like move, bounce, solid. And we don't want to have really advanced angles, otherwise if you hit the wall off a corner, you will get some very strange behaviors. So we'll stick to this for now. And if you want to have objects with collisions, the basic implementation GameMaker gives you is solid objects. Solid objects you need to be careful with. Nothing should be moving and colliding and solid all at the same time. So in this case, because the wall is static, it's not moving, and things are bouncing off it, it's perfectly safe to use it as a solid object. In some cases, people that are not satisfied with the built-in collision system will write their own. You can directly access and modify the x and the y coordinates. If it's a pre-built variable, it will turn this reddish color. For now, we will just use the default systems as they are easier to work with and more beginner friendly. And also, if you're ever confused about an object you want to send it, the sprite editor has this show information button that gives you a very concise summary of your object. So you can see everything at a glance. You can save it. Especially useful if you're having trouble and you, man, I don't know where I'm going wrong with this logic. You can send someone that and they'll be able to see all of your code and context. So here's our ball. Friction's a little high. Maybe we'll turn it down. And at the moment, we also can't kick it again because we set that flag variable to false. So we need to find a way to restore that. So let's knock our friction back down to that, let's say. And then we're going to check in our step event. So now, if we're moving, the step event will check every frame for an object. So let's say, yeah, we hit the ball. So this is shorthand for saying that. I find shorthand very useful. It's my preferred style. Pretty easy to read. So let's say, okay, you've hit the ball. You can't hit it again. Now we want to see if you're still moving. So if you are, in fact, no longer moving, which would be your speed is 0, just set it back. Now if we go back into our room, aim it a little, kick, comes to a stop, you can rotate, and you'll notice I'm mashing the space bar, but it won't launch again until it stops moving. So that's just a really basic logical check. And now we have our little beginnings of a golf ball game, and we put it together in only 20 or so minutes.
Does it always bounce at 90 degrees?
Not necessarily. Like, let's say I do this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I turned off advanced collision checking for bounces because you will get weird angles if you do not manage that properly, but this is a very straightforward angle of incidence, angle of reflection collision system. So no need to worry about that anymore. All right, so what else do you think we can do to improve this a little? Let's make this your game. Do you have any suggestions for what we should do next?
Actually, really quick. Is everyone caught up? I feel like it's an important question.
What grammar did you put in the, was it collision object wall? That bounce function takes in advanced.
Yeah, so this is a Boolean variable. This does a different set of calculations. Since we're just using really flat ones, we don't need to worry about more advanced calculations. The simple angle of incidence calculations will work. You will receive some really weird issues where things may not necessarily bounce off at what seems like the right angle. They'll seem suddenly sharp or obtuse. It works better for rounded surfaces. I'm not even a fan of advanced collision for those. I'd rather write my own in, but this is really great for basic collisions.
Can you pull up your draw real quick?
Sure. I did explain this earlier. Does this make sense to everyone as well? What we're doing here with the length direction function? Okay. Let me know when you're good.
Also, I might have missed it, but where do you set it so it actually launches the object?
Space.
That would be in the space.
Okay, yeah, I did miss that. Sorry.
Yeah. So here I'm just saying we can no longer hit the ball again once it's been hit and we set the speed.
I can change.
We good in the back? Okay. Anyone else?
Good.
Okay. Maybe perhaps a quick little change we can do is so the arrow does not appear if we're currently moving. It's a really simple conditional. And maybe we can also apply this to changing the direction. We can do Actually, this is already set up properly. So now if we run our game, you're here on our golf plane, and I got that conditional backwards, my bad. It's if you can't hit it, show the arrow. Small mistake on my part. There we go. So we have the beginnings of our little mini golf game. What else do you think we could add to this? Do we have any suggestions?
Way to change, like, how hard you hit the ball?
Sure. So what sort of system do you have in mind? Like you hit space once, you begin charging it up, kind of a?
Yeah, like you hold down space and release.
Okay, sure thing. Let's start with that. So at the moment we have our, yes, we can hit it. Now let's say we're gonna add another variable into the mix. It's like you're currently charging. So we'll start with that. So that way now we have several different states. We can do states as a combination of you can hit it and you are currently charging the ball. So let's say when you do this, when you hit it and you are charging, so now this way if you are setting it up, you can stop charging, you stop being able to hit it, you launch the ball. Now let's set a new condition where you can hit it, but you're not charging. Let's say you can, in fact, start doing that. So you can see we're setting up like a simple state system here. So if you can hit it and you're not charging, start charging. If you can hit it and you are charging and you hit space, then you hit it with a stronger force. So let's go ahead, we added it here. Let's say we want to have the strength of our hit. Let's start it really weak. Let's start it at, say, 1. You hit it, it starts moving, like you double tap instantly, you move at a speed of 1 pixel per second. Very slow. Now let's say you're here, and it's charging. Let's say you start by incrementing your strength a little. Say plus equals we'll say that any per step. Remember, a step function is going to activate, in our case, 60 times a second, so you need to be careful using large values. Like we saw with the Unity one before, if you say, okay, move 2 units per step, but a Unity unit is large, and that process is 60 times a second, you will move 120 Unity units in 1 second, and then suddenly you're far out in space. So use small values right off the start. There's no built-in delta time system for GameMaker, so you just need to be very judicious about your value scales. And in this case, if your strength goes over a certain amount, in this case we say 10, you'll make a little stronger shots than before. Let's reset our strength. In this case, we do this. Once we're done moving, we should reset the strength. And now you probably want to say, well, how can we see this value in game? We can do this a couple different ways. We can always write it directly to the screen, hey, here's your current strength, or we can change the size of the arrow. Does anyone have any suggestions for how we can implement this? We can do the arrow, we can do like a little meter that fills up and then goes back down.
If we making the arrow longer based on strength?
Yeah, we can do that. You want to do that?
Sure.
Okay. So in this case, we can increase our length by strength. Now a 1 pixel increase up to a 10 pixel increase may not be too visible. So let's make it a little more visible. 3 pixels is a lot. Let's settle on 2. And now if this is all set up, let's try and see where we're at so far. So open our game, we can move it around, and we're charging. Whee! Let's rotate. Yes, I forgot the most important part. When we actually kick the ball, we're still moving at a fixed speed of 8. Let's change that to our strength. And it's kind of slow, so let's up our strength a little. We have a stronger arm than that. So let's aim. It goes up, and then back down. So that's a stronger one. If we keep this and we double tap really quick, we're much slower. Did I see a hand in the back?
Sorry, I'm just scratching.
Okay, cool. Everything makes sense so far? You may also notice that our little happy smiley guy is kind of small and kind of blurry. And I have a feeling most GameMaker users absolutely love their pixel art. So in this case, we're going to go into our global game settings under the graphics tab. I'm going to uncheck interpolate colors between pixels. This gives you a much cleaner visual representation. And also while we're here, I'm just going to go ahead and resize our ball really quick. Let's say we set it to 12 by 12 pixels. Take the circle tool and just drag it out. Also, make sure that when you change this ball sprite, you want to recenter your origin. That is where everything is drawn from. If we change our origin to be the top left of the sprite, when we go into the game and run it, you will see what sprite origin does with draw commands. We are now going to draw from the top left. And that just looks funny. And is a little inaccurate as to what's going on. So make sure you center that sprite. So far, we have our little mini golf area. Maybe we should make it a little more, bit more level, just for demonstration purposes. So let's say you have a little bend to go around. We take our ball, put it here. Now you may be thinking, we need a goal. So let's add that next. So we'll add our hole. And one of the things you can do in GameMaker is you can set an object's draw depth. The higher a draw depth is, the further down it's drawn. The lower it is, the further above you it's drawn. So currently, our wall and our ball are being drawn on roughly the same plane of existence. Now let's say for the hole, we want to put it behind us. So we can set a depth of 5, so it will always be drawn behind. And if you want to see how important depth is, let's set it to -5, where the hole is drawn above the ball. Let's go ahead and let's place our dummy hole object right here and run the game. So we wait, charge it up. You'll notice as we go by, it clips behind the object. That does not look right. So we'll set our depth to 5. Everyone get an idea what we're doing here with depth? Excellent. And so let's say for our ball, just rename this so I'm consistent with my naming. The ball goes in the hole. Success. But maybe you want to have it so in golf, if you're going too fast over the hole, the ball just clips over it. So you collide with the hole. We can check if our speed is way too big, so let's say over 3. Or in this case, let's make sure our speed is under 3. Let's make it disappear. This just destroys an instance. It stops existing once we do this. Do that, run the game. We go too fast. We go slow though, then we're good. And there we have it. So we have the makings of our game so far. We have our hole, we have a ball, we can go inside. So that's basically the really core mechanic of this game, and we've summarized that in well under an hour. You already have something you can technically make playable. Let's say we have 2 rooms. I'm just going to duplicate this room. And let's make something just a little visually different. Let's add another turn. We put our ball here in the pit. And for our ball, let's say when it's destroyed, room, go to next. Most of the functions in GameMaker language are really straightforward and easy to read. You can usually look at a function, you know exactly what it does by the name. I have memorized most of these functions. You do not need to memorize all of them. You can always look them up. The manual is great for this. But yes, so just look for the function that does what you need it to do. You put them together, you have a really great chain of logic that's easy to follow, easy to understand, and does exactly what you need. So let's go here. Well, let's try and complete our game. I may not be too great at our mini golf. Like in that case, I completely forgot about the speed rule. So let's say I get myself in a position that's a little bit more advantageous to get in there. There we go. And we go to the next room. So if you just put a bunch of these together, you would have a game effectively. You have your levels, you have your mechanics, you can keep adding more things on top of this. So let's start by adding some more things to this. Anything else you would like to see added into our little mini golf game? Any obstacles, little visual effects? We have time to do all of that.
Something similar to a windmill, but in 2D, so just a moving block that either stops you or you bounce off of or something.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead. We'll just call it a windmill for now. So you just want some other kind of obstacle, like a moving one?
Think of it like on a level you had, there'd be one in like the middle, just moving up and down that you have to time.
Sure. So don't feel necessarily like you have to do any sort of super fancy sprite work. I'm just putting together this really simple block. You can reuse another sprite if you want. In this case, I just made this little gray block, and that will be your windmill. Say, all right, excellent. And you want only to move on, let's say, a vertical axis. Well, let's say you can do these two constants are super useful. If you only want to move on a vertical or horizontal axis, you could explicitly set vertical and horizontal speed this way. And it'll translate that into a speed and direction in the object. So in this case, let's say you want to start by doing that. And then if our ball, actually, we shouldn't do it there. Let's go into our ball and say, okay, when we collide with this, bounce off it. So we can do this, and then we can go in the windmill, set it to solid, and we're good. Or, if you want to have similar behaviors across objects, you can do the parent-child relationship. So a parent object will inherit any behaviors you specify. In this case, we're not going to be inheriting any behaviors. The wall doesn't have any. The windmill won't have any, just moving. And since the wall doesn't have it, it's not a worry. So let's say we go to our windmill, set our parent to the wall. Now here, we don't need to have this code block. We can actually get rid of it. Because if it collides with the wall, the ball colliding with the windmill is the same as it colliding with the wall. So this is great if you want to have any object that when you hit it, let's say your player loses health, you can create a generic, like, object hazard, make your player interact with the hazard object for taking damage, and then just set all your hazards to have the hazard as the parent. You can save yourself a lot of repetitive legwork that way.
Do you have to put anything for when the moving windmill collides with the wall, or because it's because the wall is a parent, it knows that if it collides with the wall, it doesn't go through it?
Great question, and yes, we do need to specify, because that behavior is not specified in the wall, so we'll have to add it to the windmill. Now let's say when your windmill runs up against the wall, we reverse direction, and we can do that by saying, take our horizontal speed and multiply it by -1. And that'll just simply make it go the other way.
What if it's moving up and down?
Then we would change, I did make it move up and down. Vertical speed multiplied by -1. Wait, hold on. Stop execution for a second. I forgot to actually put it in the game. So let's see how this works. it is a moving object and it's solid, so collision could get a little troublesome at times, but let's see how this works out. So there it is, it's moving. We're gonna go right past it. Right past it again. Oh no. It appears I have lodged it between me and the wall, and it stopped moving. Let's say, if I try and time this really well, not my day for hitting these blocks. There we go. But either way, if you hit it, it stops you. It's somewhat achieves its goal. It is behaving a little weird, but the idea is there. And besides, what's a game without its own fun little quirks? A mess. There we go. So in that case, we hit it dead on, and it bounced off. Maybe we can make it move a little slower. But the idea is there. Anything else we can add? I think I'll go ahead and, yes?
Maybe a hit counter for how many times you hit the ball.
Like a par score?
Yeah.
Sure thing. So let's keep track of that in our ball. We'll just make that a new variable. You've hit it 0 times. And we press space. If you successfully hit it, increment your hits. Yep, I've named the variable, name that. And then let's say you want to keep track of that. We'll go ahead and with our player object, we're going to draw to the screen a little counter, keep track of how many times we've had it hit. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take draw the white arrow, the part where it says set the color to be white. I'm going to take it outside the if block. That way anything we draw is colored white. And let's say I wanted to draw text to the screen. In the case of our room, I want to draw it in the upper left corner. We'll draw it 16:16, so it has a little offset. And then I can say, draw hits. Now if we run the game, you'll see we have our number. And I hit the ball, and it increments. I hit it again, and it goes up. And I'm going to try and get it in the hole. There we go. And we made it. So now we can keep track of how many times we've hit the ball. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a second, and let's make this a little more interesting. So currently, when the ball goes right to the hole, we just go to the next level. It just stops. There's really no indication that you've made it. It's kind of a sudden jump. So first things first, I'm going to take out our line of code here. Let's just go to the next room. Let's get rid of that for now. And let's instead write some behavior where, let's say it plays a little animation. I've supplied you with a finish flag. So maybe we want to have it so when you hit the hole, it does the little thing. If you remember from Undertale, you get the ball in the hole, the little flag comes up, the do-do-do-do. Let's do that. So I was working this out. I actually wrote a new function to do specifically this morning. So let's see what we can do. Let's say our current flag height is 0. It is that low. And then let's say we keep track of a variable if we finished or not. Now obviously we have it when this is created. But let's say we check, and then if our ball doesn't exist, instance exists, object, ball, and then negate it. So if the ball doesn't exist, and hey, we haven't finished, so once the ball doesn't exist and it's not finished, let's say we set finish to true, this will prevent our code from self-executing too many times. If you set a timer and you don't manage these conditionals properly, you can have your conditional constantly reset and then you get nowhere. So you just have to keep an eye on logical progression that you don't get stuck anywhere. All these little additional Boolean variables and checks make sure the game runs smoothly. So let's say, okay, great, you finished. So if you're finished, let's say you want the flag to start raising up. But if we say, okay, raise the flag 1 pixel, we'll be done pretty quickly. But it doesn't make sense to raise by fractions of a pixel. So I'm going to introduce timing, which is what alarms are for. So you can call an alarm, and then in brackets, you indicate the number. You have 0 through 11. You have 12 alarms to make use of as a basic object. Now let's say, okay, and then every 1/4 of a second, we'll raise it up. So that way our flag goes from raising in less than a second to maybe 1.5 seconds. And then let's say after 2 seconds of our alarm being on screen, in this case we can calculate it to 120 frames, and then we can say, okay, let's go to the next level. But as you remember, Alex said we don't like magic numbers. So if you want to keep track of some time, let's write a function that returns seconds. So we'll make a script. We'll say seconds. Say we can return our room speed, so our frame rate, times argument 0. So this is if you want to clean up your code so it's a little easier for you to understand, you can put these sort of conversion functions and then call them on your own. So in this case, if I say 15 in like the argument speed, it'll say room speed times that many seconds. And that converts the seconds value into number of frames. So let's say for this, we can now instead set this to 1/4 of a second. And this to 2. Does that make sense, what we're doing here? Anyone still lost? Okay, everyone looks good. So great, we've done it. And now when you want your alarm to trigger, you just pick it from the event hierarchy. And then let's say, all right, our alarm's here. And we want it to keep refreshing. So we'll set the timer again. So let's say our flag is not fully raised. In this case, our flag is 24 pixels tall. If you don't want to hard code the value, this exists. There's a function for just about everything. All the basic operations you can think of, it exists. So if it's not fully raised, we'll set the timer. And let's say we want to raise the flag height by 1 that time. Then our alarm 1. Go to the next room. So all that's left is to actually draw the flag. So in this case, we draw ourselves, and we don't want all of the flag to appear at once. We only want part of it to appear. So we can do draw, sprite, part. Draw part of a sprite. And we're drawing the flag. It only has one sub-image, so we can just leave that at 0. We are not drawing it. The arguments here are for the start coordinate and then the width and the height. We're not going to cut out the entire sprite, so we can just draw it from its origin. We are going to draw the whole width of the sprite. So we'll get the width. And our height will be our flag height. And we'll draw it right where we are at X and Y. Everyone follow so far? Should I leave that code snippet up? Anyone copying code still? I'll leave it up for a second and explain more. So this will draw part of our sprite, and essentially, in fact, since moving upwards is negative in Y, we're going to say, okay, draw this section of the sprite, so like draw the first 6 pixels, 6 pixels above. And if you look at our flag, I set my origin to be roughly around the center of the pole at 3 pixels, and at the bottom of the flag at 24 pixels. So if we run this now, let's get ourselves to the end. Preferably not getting stuck under the windmill. Well, we did not set our flag to go up for very long. It was slowly ascending, and then the 2-second timer hit. So we mistimed that a little.
It'll be in 6 seconds.
Yeah, let's increase it. So first things I'm gonna do is if I go into here, let's make that raise a lot faster. Let's make the level end a lot later. Let's change this value. And just for test purposes, I'm gonna be lazy. I'm gonna take the hole and I'm gonna drag it right over my ball. So that way, as soon as the level starts, the ball hits it, the flag goes up. Do-do-do. Hooray. And then after a while, we go to the next room. So you can adjust those values as you like. But there we have it. We have a really simple, the flag goes up and appears. So let's actually finish the level out. Let's play it through. You can see it in action at the end of the level. There we go. A lot better. Hooray. Oh no. We said go to the next room, but there isn't a next room, so we got an error. Who wants to bet there's a function that handles exactly that case? That like, gee, maybe we shouldn't go on if the next room doesn't exist. Adam, you have your hand up?
No, because I believe there is a function that makes that problem.
So if there is a room that exists and it's the next room, boy, that got messy. Go to the next room. Otherwise, maybe you want to go back to the menu or something, but we don't have that yet, so we'll just restart the game. So now, let's also go ahead and do this here. And just for our sanity, I'm going to knock the level advance time down to 4 seconds. And let's see if this loops as we'd expect. So we think, okay, it should go to the next room, and then when that room doesn't exist, we'll go back to the start. Great. 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 Everything works as intended. So in just under an hour, we now have an entire complete game loop. We can create our levels, we added an obstacle, there's a little finish animation, and when we're done, it starts back over. So as you can see, and this was me slowing down, explaining, and doing some basic things, when you have much more mastery over the program, you can do these things faster and without having to explain it to an audience. We could possibly have created this in 10 minutes. This program is fast. And just think how long it took us for the other programs to get really basic things up and running. We had them done just like that. So this is why I think it's a really great program for 2D games. It's lightweight, not very bloated, and look at how quickly you can get some simple stuff done. So, we still have some time. We have about 20 minutes. If you have any questions or you want to see any other additions or features used, I'm more than happy to take the requests.
What was the first project you did in gaming?
Yes. My first GameMaker project was, for anyone that has used this program without other instruction, it is undoubtedly the infamous classic Catch the Clown.
I did that one.
Basically, Catch the Clown, or Click the Clown as it's become known, is you make a game where there is a clown or another object, and it moves on its own randomly in the center of a room. And you have to click it. And every time you click it, it jumps to a new location, you get 10 points. But every time you click it, it starts moving faster and faster. Needless to say, it gets pretty quick. And I actually wonder, on my site for a while, I had the 404 page set to Click the Clown. I want to see if it still works. For whatever reason, it's not working. However, Catch the Clown has not gone away. Instead, if you start a new project, you go to tutorials, and you click beginner. There's some built-in tutorials, by the way, and they even cover advanced things, like optimizing the draw pipeline. connecting to Facebook, surface effects. There's a whole bunch of really interesting things in here.
Did you mention the Humble Bundle?
Yes, the Humble Bundle I mentioned at the start,
Did you mention that other thing about the Humble Bundle we have?
which is,
We have a giveaway.
ooh, spicy.
Club has
Maybe.
a spare copy of the full $15 Humble Bundle, which features GameMaker keys for iOS, Android, Windows, UWP, Mac and Linux, and Studio, like Windows GameMaker Studio. What's the version? Professional.
Professional.
We have one of those keys, like one of that. We basically bought a gift version of the Humble Bundle, and one person in here can get it today. James is the one who gets to decide how that happens. Alternatively, we can wait until the game jam, and we can give it out as a special category like best use of GameMaker.
Yeah.
To someone who doesn't have it.
Also, naturally, I bought the bundle as well. But you see, I actually own the full-fledged Master Collection version, so I really don't have a need for a couple of those keys and may be willing to give them out. So we may see some giveaways for future events.
What is in the Master Edition?
Everything. Every single export module, and if they release any more export modules, you get those for free.
Okay.
Naturally, ever since I picked it up, it was massively discounted because they're like, hey, we want to raise the price of this by a lot, and that's why it's now, I don't know, yeah, $800. It used to not be $800. It was $500. What a cost savings, I know. But they were like, hey, we want to raise this from $500 to $800. But if you buy it now, we'll take every module you currently own and we'll subtract the price from it. So I'm like, okay, what modules do I own? And as it turns out, I got Windows, Mac, Linux, and HTML5 heavily discounted because I participated in their beta test for the HTML5 export. So they said, hey, you can upgrade to the full-fledged $800 Master Collection for like $300. And I was like, I got $300 for my birthday. Guess what I'm doing? And then they released one more export module. Now they're beta testing the next version where that guarantee does not hold. So the Humble Bundle is a really great deal. A really good one. But that aside, let's go ahead and let's create my first game. It's going to download it. This is what Catch the Clown is. It has changed. Now it is this guy in a circus environment. But have you know, a long time ago, it was it actually expects me to make the game. Wait,
All right, James.
So
This
it's
test.
not-
Can you do
Well,
it in
fine, go.
5 minutes? Go.
You said it could be done in 10 minutes. Yes.
We got 15.
I believe in James.
all right, let's.
have to explain it.
How quickly do you think I can remake a really basic Catch the Clown?
I'll find it.
I give you 5 minutes.
You know, it's not the same without actually seeing what the clown looks like. So let me just pause the time.
If you go to demos instead of tutorials in the startup page, they have completed tutorials.
Okay, we'll pull it up in a second, but you need to remember, Catch the Clown looks something like this. It's truly horrifying. This is everyone's first GameMaker game. Like, look at it. It's horrible. It's the creepiest thing you've ever seen. So yeah, this is what everyone's first game looks like, and on that suggestion, I don't feel like remaking Click the Clown in 5 seconds. No, I don't want to save my changes.
Completed tutorials.
There we go. Okay, let's try this again. I was a little disappointed when it's like, let's make the first game.
See, we
I
can
think you're
actually
good at
save
about
72,600 frames on the game developer by actually just importing the completed project right at the start. He's actually a master's.
Unlimited assets.
GameMaker Studio.
All right, let's see what Catch the Clown looks like. Oh god, they even kept the hard MIDI music. This has not changed since GameMaker 6. It gets faster and faster. It's absolutely horrible. But there you have it. This is what everyone's first GameMaker project winds up being. It's Click the Clown.
Not me.
Except you're Adam, or you find folks, in which case your first game is mini golf. Which, if you ask me, is a far better fate than Quick the Clown. Anything else? We still have 14 minutes if there's anything else you'd like to see.
What's GameMaker capable of? Shows video if I would like to.
Yep, we've already seen a whole bunch of games that were already made in GameMaker. I had a couple of pictures. I think everyone here has seen gameplay from all of those. So yeah, it is definitely capable of quite some great things.
What about GameMaker 3D?
Don't do this. They've just been introduced to the engine. Don't do this to them.
Triggered. Do it.
Don't.
So let's see, if I remember correctly,
What about 3D?
I remember seeing a thread on the community full of people going, the GameMaker's better than Unity for 3D. All you have to do is write the DirectX pipeline yourself. These people are nuts. Yeah, there we go. Thread titled 3D is easy. So let's see if there's any good screenshots in here, because there are people that upload their screen. Yeah, like, you can do that.
We can't see anything.
Wow, of course, it's like the most desaturated. Yeah, please hit the likes for this.
This is made in GameMaker.
This is made in GameMaker. That was made in GameMaker. You can even tell it has the window and the horrible aerial default font settings. Look at that baked lighting. Look at that model chest. Look at this generic 3D space tunnel game. Vague pixel models, like a tent, and some terrible looking weeds, and a bunch of discussion on code. Like, this is what it starts to look like. It's horrible, don't do this.
Don't you have the start of a game that you're
You've
making
seen a way
3D?
better way to develop a 3D than
You still have that?
I did do a 3D game in GameMaker, and then you have like people like this guy, and look at that, like refractive water, and these people are crazy. They're all nuts. Look at this.
Is that Minecraft?
Oh boy.
No, it's Terraria.
The voxel craze never escapes.
Minecraft is just a whole bunch of junk.
This is someone's generic game, and we don't talk about the infamous 3D game. You'll notice there's a couple of Vinesauce video links. It's probably regarded as the worst 3D GameMaker game ever made. We're not talking about that one.
Vinesauce?
Yeah, you know those people?
No.
They're YouTube.
Yeah, they're a YouTube channel and they like play games.
Oh.
Actually, you know what? Also, if you're curious about my adventures in 3D, let's go to the sizzle reel and let's skip ahead to like. I'm trying to find it in here.
Slip spaces in there. Right there.
So yeah, this was a game I made. It was for Game Jam 7. Yeah, this was made in GameMaker. That's what 3D can do. I wouldn't say it was fun or easy to work with, but it is in fact very capable of doing some really nice things. I mean, of course, it's not quite as nice as, let's say, come on, buffer.
Hit play.
What a radical suggestion. You know, like, I don't know, this. Look at how nice that looks. You see, this is why I advocate both engines for 3D, but GameMaker for 2D. Because you can have something that looks just as nice as the GameMaker one I did quite easily in Unreal, but you have to first set it to 2D and handle all of its specialized 2D constants. And then you have to export the file, and suddenly it is like 150 times larger than it needs to be. Anyway, there is one thing I should show you all before we continue off on our related tangent. You're probably thinking, boy, this program's great. I made a great game. I want to share it with my friends. And you're like, hey, you should download GameMaker and load the project file. Don't do that. You can export your games. And it's as simple as going to File, Create Application, save it somewhere, and then you can set your options here. The default is an installer. You probably don't want to install your 2-level golf game, which I think at the moment you instantly win because I set it to test the room loop. But let's say you want to share it anyway, and like, look at my really cool flag animation. Set it to single runtime executable, save it, let the console run for a second, the cabinet maker tool will pop up, and once that's done, let's go here. You can click on your game. Oh boy, we have flag raising simulator complete.
Can you load this into the arcade machine as is?
Without an escape button or anything?
Yeah, no, just flags.
Oh, hey, yeah, guys, about that, please include escape to somehow either open a pause menu with the close button or just close your game, because it's so annoying to have to, we demo games on closing server, and you'll be in full screen, and you're like, all right, that was a great game, time to close it, and you can't. So you have to alt-tab out of it,
It literally
and right-click
takes
it,
1 minute.
and close it.
I
It takes
forget
30
every
seconds.
time, though.
You lose my vote if you don't have an escape button, because it's just so.
Oh, why are you fixing that?
Well, you see,
That's character.
you wanna know how quick it takes to add an escape button to the game? There we go. Now you can escape your own game. Unless you've got the ball in the hole, in which case you can't escape until the level loads again. See, like, watch.
The physical controller is the.
No!
No!
the joysticks are 4 buttons that
Right, yeah. It gets stuck.
It's actually
I can't escape. I can't
no
escape.
It's
Now I can escape.
It's like
I don't know.
There you go. Adding an escape button to your game takes 30 seconds. Please do it.
Thank you.
I am guilty of that myself sometimes, but
Yes,
you forget
he
a lot
is.
of things when you're in a game jam. So there you have it. We have made a GameMaker game. Congratulations on your first round of mini golf. I encourage you to continue working with the software if you're interested. Additionally, the Humble Bundle, like I mentioned before, if we go back here, you'll notice it includes source code. You can open the projects for commercial games and see how the developers have structured and organized their projects. It is a great learning opportunity. It might be a little intimidating, but it is a great opportunity. So yeah, get out there, make games, it'll be great. Thank you for listening.